Welcome to episode 6 of the ABR podcast. I'm Amy Baillieu, Deputy Editor of ABR. What you're about to hear was recorded at the 2016 Melbourne Writers Festival during the 2016 Jolley Prize ceremony. This year was the 7th time that ABR has presented a short story prize, and this year it was worth a total of $12,500 with a first prize of $7,000. Over the last few years, we've seen the Jolley Prize develop into a major international literary award, and its reputation and profile are continually growing. The Jolley Prize was internationalised in 2014, and this year we were delighted to receive a record number of entries, almost 1,400, from 38 different countries. The Jolley Prize is one of the world's most lucrative and prestigious awards for new short fiction, and it wouldn't be possible without the generous support of ABR patron Mr Ian Dickson. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Ian for his support of the Jolley Prize. I would also like to thank authors Maxine Beneba Clarke and David Wilson, who judged the prize with me this year. Maxine and Dave were a joy to work with, and they helped to make the judging process a truly enjoyable, smooth and interesting one. I was also particularly impressed that during this period they not only helped to judge the Jolley Prize, but each published new books. Dave has a new novel, Old Scores, out from Fremantle Press in November, and Maxine has not one but 3 new books out from Hachette. And now, with no further ado, I'd like to congratulate the 3 writers whose entries were shortlisted for the Jolley. In alphabetical order, they are Ash by Anthony Lawrence, Glisk by Josephine Rowe, and The Water Calligrapher's Women by Jonathan Tell. The judges also commended 3 additional stories which will be published in the magazine in coming months. These are Help Me Harden My Heart by Dom Marina, Window by Kate Kennedy, and Slut Trouble by B.J. Silcox. In addition to these stories, you can find details of the full long list of 19 stories on our website. So congratulations again to the shortlisted and commended authors, and thank you to everyone who entered this year's Jolley Prize. I will now briefly introduce Maxine Beneba Clarke, who will be speaking on behalf of the judges. After this introduction, the Melbourne Writers Festival recording will kick in, and I will introduce the shortlisted authors, who will each then read from their story, before introducing Ian Dickson to reveal the winner. Ian will also be standing in for UK-based author Jonathan Tell. Maxine Beneba Clarke is a widely published author. Her critically acclaimed short fiction collection, Foreign Soil, won the 2013 Victorian Premier's Literary Award for an unpublished manuscript. After being published by Hachette in 2014, it won the Australian Book Industry Award for Literary Fiction Book of the Year in 2015, and the 2015 Indie Book Award for Debut Fiction. As I mentioned earlier, Maxine also has 3 new books coming out this year. Her poetry collection, Carrying the World, was published in May, and her powerful memoir, The Hate Race, was published earlier this month. She also has a picture book based on one of the stories from Foreign Soil coming out in late October. And for those of you who are lucky enough to be there, she delivered an incredibly moving keynote speech at the Melbourne Writers Festival launch. Thanks, Maxine.
Thank you to everyone for being here. I was so thrilled to be asked to be a judge for the Australian Book Review's Elizabeth Jolley Short Story Prize this year. I've judged a few prizes this year, but short fiction is something that's really close to my heart. It's my preferred, form to work in. And I think, I was asked to speak a little bit about the value of literary prizes, and I'm always hesitant to sing the praises of literary prizes without qualification. But I think when something is as unappreciated, particularly in Australia, as short fiction is, and when you have a judging panel that's diverse and enthusiastic, and when you have a submission pool of people who are not only so enthusiastic but so talented, to get 1,400 entries is just extraordinary. What can you do but celebrate a prize? So I'm very thrilled to have been part of the process, and I want to thank Amy Baillieu and David Wilson. It was an absolutely painless process, which not all judging experiences are. There was no arm wrestling even, so it was fantastic. So we had, around 1,400 stories. We whittled them down to about 60 as a long list, which is a lot to reread and discuss each one of them. But we did, and it was an incredible process. They were all of outstanding quality. But the 3 that we shortlisted had a lot in common. They were sound in structure, they were stylistically distinct, they were exciting and engaging. The authors used words beautifully. They had an extraordinary command of language, and ultimately they were all just a good yarn, which is what short story is all about. This is what ultimately made the job of us judges easier, and in the end, our decision was unanimous. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about each of the shortlisted entries. Jonathan Tells the Water Calligrapher's Women is adventurous in form and spellbinding in subject matter. It's a story about artistry, loneliness, and transience. Like calligraphy, the visual elements of the story on the page, the absence of capitals and the repetition of letters and words as symbols is striking. The Water Calligrapher's Women is a subtle story about family and sanity and the ghosts that haunt us all. It is a piercing portrait of a man fallen, and its depiction of culture and place are nuanced and well-crafted. The echoing rhetorical questions of the narrator draw the reader in. Next we have Josephine Rose Glisk. Glisk opens on the water, the sun setting over a light-fractured ocean. It is a story of family, of brothers fractured by tragedy. Rose's attention to characterisation is razor-sharp, and her depiction of blended family is real and complex. Rowe ably brings the past and present narratives together, weaving them into a powerful tale about perception, truth, and culpability. And lastly, we have Ash by Anthony Lawrence. Ash is challenging in style and content. The unfolding landscape of Australian suburbia slowly gives way to a tale about ethics and addiction, about risk and responsibility. Ash is an exquisite examination of a relationship on the edge of collapse. The writing in this story is somehow both matter-of-fact and startlingly poetic. So I'm very proud to have been one of the three judges, and any one of these extraordinary shortlisted entries could have been the winner. So congratulations to all three of you, and it was a real honour to read your work and be part of your journey as short fiction writers. Thank you.
So our first reading this afternoon, and thank you very much for that, Maxine. Our first reading this afternoon comes from Ash by Anthony Lawrence. Anthony has published 16 books of poems and a novel. His most recent collection is Headwaters, which was published earlier this year by Pitt Street Poetry. His books and poems have won a number of awards, including the Peter Porter Poetry Prize, so yet another reason that you should all enter, and the New South Wales Premier's Literary Award. He lives on the far north coast of New South Wales.
Thanks very much, Amy. I'd like to thank ABR for sponsoring this prize, and to the judges for their hard work. I've judged a number of prizes over the years, and the attention to detail and the time it takes is extraordinary. It's a great thrill to be shortlisted for the Elizabeth Jolley Prize. A colleague at Griffith University, where I teach, writes fiction, said, congratulations, but stick to your own side of the fence. With a big smile. Ash. When he steps outside and pulls off the mask, it feels like removing a second face. The one he keeps from the ones who wouldn't understand and those who would, and who would then impose a sentence, both custodial and grammatically correct. A long list of words caged with black metaphor. His absence felt keenly on the street and at home. When he tries to keep his wife and children at a safe remove, in a dangerous state of mind. And so out there on the grass outside the backyard extension, with its blacked out windows and cement floor, its boring facade and heavy industry interior, he lights a cigarette and watches bees filling their pockets with gold as a few old galahs shoot the breeze on a low wire. And as he smokes, he watches a cold front stacking its holding towers with dark grey rain. Then he exhales, slowly, the smoke like steam from a scene in a grainy film about New York in winter. But this is the Central Coast, single-parentville, loser's paradise, beachcombers come down from addiction or corporate failure, hideaway for horoscope adherents and pale insiders who'd rather drink bong water than front up to a job with a boss whose voice is like crunching numbers at some upper register, some wanker with a name tag clipped to his air of authority, who likes to say, "Get a life or get behind me, salesman." But all this passes, as it must and as it always does, in thoughts torn from their stems in the hours he can spare. It passes like reflections in dirty water, like serious thought glimpsed from inside the goggles on a mask, which he lifts and, having arranged and adjusted the straps, slips over his face, then turns and opens a door that emits a sliver of blue light. Then he vanishes. A smell like an offering burnt in a fire fed with batteries and bleach easing out into the air. And then it's quiet. And soon a woman will come and put her ear to the wall, and perhaps she'll hear the tick of her own pulse winding down as the storm breaks, and rain falls like window glass in a B-grade movie about failed revenge and love gone bad. And then clouds like escarpments come adrift and go over and move out to sea, thunder riding shotgun over lightning forked and bright as an angiogram on a screen of sky the size of a dream of a new life somewhere else. Somewhere far from suburban streets and freaks who raise standards hammered from satin sheets, stained with years of scuttlings on waterbeds. She knows that's all there is, here and there, in kitchens and lounge rooms bruised with the light of domestic surrender. And when the street lights flicker on like bad neon down the length of a long corridor in a movie she'd once tried to watch over the shoulder of a boy with blue balls and breath like bait, she goes to the door and knocks 4 times. Too fast, too slow, and when it opens, Ash hands her a bag, clip-sealed and light as a purse of feathers. And she steps away as the door closes, closing her off for another few hours, which she'll spend on the floor, in the bath, the television on, a radio scratching away in the kitchen, and in bedside light at the end of the house, a woman lap dances onto a teenager's laptop where ideas of intimacy are made from an absence of human body hair, breast implants like beached jellyfish, and erections that never fail. It's a ritual that goes on each night, and they don't know how to stop, to settle down. Here, where they were hurt into being together by being on the run from those who wanted them gone and from themselves. And when she closes the bathroom door and opens the bag and breaks a greening of ice away with her thumbnail and turns it to powder on the window ledge using the pestle end of a shaving brush, she knuckles the gleam and then sniffs it away and then stands a long way off from herself and reels like a home movie down to the side of the bathtub to craze the warm air with her breathing. Oh yes, oh fuck, it's good, Ash, you genius. She sighs and gets ready to return, one child in tears, another on the phone, rap like sweet abuse coming through the wall of a son who quotes the Hilltop Hoods in response to any question. She leans on her elbows until she can stand to stand, and then she clears her nose, but her head can wait. And when she goes outside to watch the sky, Ash comes and puts his arm around her waist. Then he's gone, slipping away, a chemical afterglow in his wake. Then the sound of the shower, the bathroom light, a panel of dirty yellow on what's left of the old terrace that looms over them. And then Ash comes out, his hair combed, his skin pink with heat and leaking cologne. This batch, he says, cupping his hand around a thumbed flame, is so good. He stops to draw fire to the smoke. It's agony, he says, lovingly. And she understands. She slides closer. And hip to hip they watch the moon come out of the side of a cloud. Like a caesarean, she says, which makes Ash laugh, then cough. And as she lights a cigarette, a flying fox crash lands into a ficus fig. I hate them fucking things, she says, around her smoke. The moon free now, pulling away, easing a last line of gold from the edge of the cloud. Its head all thunder and bother, the sky opening out at the edges. And they sit there like they used to, back when they didn't have to watch each other's backs. Before time was something you did, before absence was normal, and the night goes on, and the kids settle down, doing what they do. And everyone has a secret. And in the dark, Ash tells her he's in trouble. It's nothing, he says, and she can hear in his voice that nothing means a world of trouble, a threat of being broken down, or worse, a 1% outlaw intervention perhaps, a cut-down baseball bat in the face in a pub beer garden. "Jesus, Ash," she says, pulling away to look at him in that long-sided glare of hers, the one she keeps for times like these. The one she's used so many times it's like raising eyebrows or a sharp intake of breath for most people. "What's going on?" she says, sitting back, the glare still fixed on his mouth, his eyes. "Don't you fucking lie to me, Ash," she says. And when she sits down, Ash stands and flicks his smoke into the dark, the sparks raining off the tumbling butt. "These guys," he says, and she says, "There are always these guys," getting to her feet like someone just come round after an accident, like someone who'd just snorted ice from the back of her hand. "Go on," she says, stepping closer, which makes him step back. "So these guys came to see me a few weeks ago when Denny and me were down the coast. They found out from Liz. Fuck, I forgot I told her we were going." But she said they knew Denny and looked okay. "Jesus Christ," he says, like ruin. And as he talks, she goes off into the dark and returns with beers, and they sit slowly, further apart this time, and drink and smoke. And Ash talks about fear, about having to leave, about this and that and every other thing she's heard for years and can't stand to hear anymore. "If you go, you go," she says. "I can't do this anymore." "What's this?" Ash says, as if stopping to pick something up from the street. "This," she says, "this life. You mean the one that's making us shitloads of cash?" He's looking right through her now. "The one you smoke? The one you don't mind living for clothes and stereo, nice car and house?" "Yes, that one," she says, as the flying fox bashes around in the leaves overhead and a dog does a fine impression of itself down the road. "That's right," she says, quieter now. "This life has been, what's the word? It's useful," he offers. "No, not like that. Not like something you use and throw away. It's like we needed it, didn't we? Or it needed us. I don't know." And this makes him turn away and consider, or block it out for the time it takes for a car to pull up the drive, its headlights going off and withdrawing like white water up the gravel. "Stay here," Ash says. "Or better, go inside and close the doors. It's okay, I know who it is." "Who is it?" she asks, but he's gone, lighting a smoke. So she goes inside and kills the lights. "Mum," her son calls through his door. "It's all right, Dad's talking to someone." And she moves to a lounge room window and parts the curtains till a splinter of street light appears. And she looks into it and through it, and they're out there, Ash and two men beside a sedan, one sitting back on the bonnet, the other standing loose with his hands in his back pockets, the language of his body like a spring about to uncoil. And there's Ash, standing on one leg, the other up, his foot on the fence. She hears words but not their meanings. She hears the tone but not the message. She's holding her breath like crystal. She's tense and waiting. She knows this scene and she wants it to end, with Ash's name in the credits rolling away. And when the men come close, she thinks she should scream, but then they shake hands. Ash folds his arms, the men drive away, their headlights swinging out into the road, and when he comes in, he looks dazed. His eyes are wild. He's pacing the carpet, the hall, the back door opens, and he's out in the yard picking up leaves, tearing them to pieces, his voice like grass fire. "They said if I don't cook what they need, they're going to rim fire my face. That's what they said." Ash looks away, then down. "Who?" she says, standing with him on the grass. "You said it was fine." "Well, it was," Ash says, "and now it's not. They want more. They want everything, and we're fucked." And then he sits down on his heels and she joins him. "Let's leave," she says. "We can go away. Leave the lab. I don't care. The kids can stay with Mum and Adelaide. That's safe." "Nowhere's safe," Ash says, and looks around. "We need to go," she says. Then she turns and goes inside, the fruit bat going off in a pocket of dark leaves, figs raining down, and the air getting heavy with the return of rain. Lightning in the distance. Ash in the middle of the yard, smoking and pacing, the rain falling now, lightly, misting his hair, his breathing ragged. And when he goes in, she's already throwing things into bags. And he doesn't try to stop her. He stands in the door of the bedroom, wiping his face. "We'll be okay," he says, trying to mean it. But she doesn't look up. She's moving fast, pulling clothes from hooks, opening drawers. "You'll wake the kids," Ash says, rubbing his hands together. "Here, let me help." He gets down a suitcase from the cupboard and unzips it. He takes shirts and jeans, socks and underwear, fills bags, stands back, looks at her. "You all right?" he asks, and she nods. Then she turns to face him, her face set hard like a mask in the hard light. "No, I'm not all right, and neither are you, or the kids. And yes, I'm fucking love the shit we do, but we can't do it anymore." And Ash looks at her the way he looks at himself in the mirror. Every time he tells himself it's over. Every time he walks away to put space between himself and his addictions. But he returns, and the mirror sees him coming. "Can you help me with this?" she asks, struggling with the zip on a suitcase. And he goes to her and kneels on the contents and zips the case up and stays there breathing heavily as rain thrashes into the roof and thunder gets under the sheeting. And after a while, they stand back together as if assessing damage. And when the storm passes, they go into the living room and sit in the dark, smoking and not talking, the glow from their cigarettes like strange code for the ways people try to heal. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. That was wonderful reading. Our next story is The Water Calligrapher's Women by Jonathan Tell. Jonathan's stories have won a number of international awards, including the Commonwealth Short Story Prize in 2015, and his story Year of the Panda was commended in the 2015 Jolley Prize. He's lived in Tokyo, Jerusalem, Berlin, London, New York and San Francisco. And at the moment he's currently based in the UK, so unfortunately he wasn't able to be here today, but luckily Ian Dickson has agreed to read from his story for us.
The Water Calligrapher's Women. She says it was a man, an old man, but all men are old to her. What man? What did he look like? What was he wearing? What did he do? A man with a stick, a long stick. What was it, a hard stick? Yes, the man's stick was long and hard. Yes, a man with a long stick, and it was wet at the end. Aye, it must be Water Calligrapher. Water Calligrapher Wu. He has a stick, a broomstick, and he ties a red nylon sponge to the end. He carries a pail of water. He dips the sponge in the water, and he calligraphs characters on the ground. He has a cap, too, a blue-peaked cap, like people used to wear in the old days, and he places it on the ground with the inside showing. And sometimes people drop money in it, if they like his calligraphy. He used to do his calligraphy in the waste ground next to the supermarket. But the supermarket expanded and took over the waste ground. So he moved to the marble terrace in front of the stock trading office. But they demolished the stock trading office, marble terrace and all, so he moved opposite the post office. But the urban security officials shooed him away. So now he does his calligraphy on the dusty pavement behind the public toilet. And not many passers-by come down there. It's a dead-end alley. Nobody walks that way to anywhere else. And he can't make much money, but at least he's left alone. He's an expert calligrapher. Nobody said he wasn't. He loads his sponge with just enough water, but not too much. His sponge strokes have style. He handles a long stick like an ink brush, like he might be a famous artist sketching a landscape with figures. He knows how to twist the sponge as he slides it along so as to hide the tip. If you stood a way off and squinted, you'd think the stick was a brush and his whole body was a hand. He calligraphs phrases, important phrases. He likes phrases that have 4 characters apiece because they fit into his 4 rectangular paving slabs. But he can do more. Oh yes, 8 characters, 16. There's no limit to how many characters he can calligraph, one after another, if he puts his back into it. Tell us some of the things he's calligraphed. Oh, quotes from politicians and poets and philosophers. Suffering makes nation noble, and palest ink, best memory. An enterprising baker Hurong commissioned calligrapher Wu to write a slogan, "Eat delicious French-style pastries." Somebody comes out of the toilet and they're inspired to eat a foreign pastry. Are the pastries good? Has anybody eaten any of Baker Hurong's French-style pastries? Yes, they are very good. You should try one. What else has he calligraphed? Experience comb bald man. and paper cannot wrap fire, and if bow, bow low. When is Calligrapher Wu at work? He's at work in spring and summer and autumn. He can't work in the rain, of course. When there's too much rain, his own water is invisible. We've seen him in the mist. We've even seen him in drizzle. A drop here, a drop there he can cope with. But a proper downpour, he has to wait for it to come to an end and the ground to dry up. And in winter, once the snow comes, of course he can't work at all. Where does he go in winter? How does he survive? Is Calligrapher Wu an outsider, a migrant from the provinces? No, he's not, because urban security came and checked his ID. He's got an ID and a residence permit, just like you and me. He's a Beijinger born and bred. Well, anyone can tell that just to look at him. A failure, a loser, a bit funny in the head, we'll grant that. All the same, he's one of our own. But we never would have suspected, with little Jiao Jiao of all people. Such a sweet girl, with a lovely smile, and smart too. What did he say to her? That's a trick question. Why is it a trick question? Because Calligrapher Wu never speaks. He can't speak? No, he can speak. He can speak as well as anybody. He simply never does. And it's not that his vocal cords don't work, or his lungs, because they do. When the bad boys steal money from his begging cap, he curses them out. Oh, yes, he does, but not in words. He howls. He howls like a dog when you kick it, like a cat when you tread on its tail. He shakes his stick at them and he splatters them with his water. But it seems he sees no reason to speak most of the time. And maybe he has a point there. All the useless conversations the rest of us have. Oh, it's windy. My, it's windy today. Yes, a lot of wind. Yes, it's extremely windy. I'm coming, you're going, I'm coming. Yes, it's very windy. I'll say it's windy. Extraordinarily windy. I've never known so much wind. But the fact of the matter, there's no denying. Calligrapher Wu and little Jiao Jiao. The police arrested him. And the police released him without charges, which is shocking. Because if not him, then who? Somebody else in the neighborhood, an unknown person, and that's more scary. Because with Calligrapher Wu, at least we can warn the children. Stay away from him. He's got a long stick, a long hard stick with its wet at the end. He's crazy, he means trouble. But if not him, could be anybody. Kindly bus driver, school guard who's always ready with a quip. It might even be a woman. A nursery school teacher, or one of those gossipy biddies on the residence committee, so proud of her red armband. It might be any one of us. It might be me or you. But even if Calligrapher Wu is innocent, how come the police didn't get him to confess? It turns out that Calligrapher Wu's wife pleaded. He has a wife? We didn't know he had a wife. How can a man like that have a wife? Where is she? What sort of person is she? What does she do with herself when he's putting water on the paving stones, leaving his mark like a dog? Well, not exactly his wife. It was his ex-wife, rather. Well, that's just about conceivable. Maybe he wasn't always like this. Maybe once he was normal, a decent citizen. Then a blow to his head, a brain tumor, a work accident, and he becomes the kind of fellow who calligraphs behind the public toilet. And he must have an education because he's literate. And his calligraphy is excellent. Nobody ever said it wasn't. He can make fine marks with his sponge in 8 different ways. He has a fine hand and a fine memory. In the spring, he calligraphs a poem about spring, and in the summer about summer, and in the autumn about autumn. And in the winter, who knows what happens to him in the winter? Don't ruin my life, the ex-wife pleaded with the police. Don't ruin the life of our child. A child? The water calligrapher has a child? The very idea seems absurd. Yet, why not? When we think about it, a man with a long hard stick that's wet at the end, and he calligraphs classic poems, he can charm them. With poems like that, a man can go a long way. Like that poem about boating on the lake with courtesans during the Tang dynasty. Well, if that doesn't charm the birds from the trees, we don't know what does. Something like this. We weren't there ourselves, but we can imagine it. The ex-wife went to the mother of the girl, and woman to woman she made her plea. She pressed one hand against the palm of the other and pressed them both against her chest. She bowed low. We wouldn't be surprised if she went down on her knees and kowtowed like those in costume dramas on TV. She cried. Yes, surely she cried. Tears streaming from her eyes, making little patterns on her cheeks and neck and on the dusty ground. And the mother discussed it with the father, and they spoke to the girl, and the parents spoke to the police, and it was agreed that it would be best for everybody if the charges were withdrawn. And here he was, back again, brazen, writing his words on the stone. Older ginger, hotter spice, and steel bell, ears covered, and mouth dagger, heart tofu. So we spoke to the street artists. We don't normally speak to them. Why would we speak to them, except to say, here's some money. I enjoyed that song. I heard that song before. That song has a ring to it. Can you play that song over again? Can you play a different song? Can you play the song with a crow in it? Can you play a love song? Can you play a folk song from Qinghai province? If I sing you a song, can you sing it back to me only 10,000 times better? Thank you. Here's some money. My, isn't it windy? Oh, it's windy. It's extremely windy today. I've got to run or I'll miss my bus. But today we asked about the water calligrapher. What's his story? What's going on with him? What happened to him long ago? There's the blind man who plays the erhu, and there's the not blind man who plays the erhu. There's the juggler, and there's the acrobat, and there's a man who passes solid steel rings through each other. We don't know how he does it. There's a secret to it. And the whole point of secrets is that they're secret. But today, the street artists all told us, if we want the truth of the matter, we should squat on the dusty ground at the end of the alley near the public toilets, and we should have a conversation with the water calligrapher himself. But how can we speak with a man who doesn't speak?
Thanks, Ian, for that reading. And you can read the final third of The Water Calligrapher's Women in the August issue, which is on sale from the bookshop after this. So our final reading this afternoon is Josephine Rowe reading from her story Glisk. Josephine is the author of 2 short story collections and the novel A Loving, Faithful Animal. These are all published by the University of Queensland Press, and I believe some of them will also be on sale from the bookshop. Her fiction and essays have been published widely, and she is a recent recipient of a Stegner Fellowship in Fiction from Stanford University. Her story, Suitable for a Lampshade, won the Reader's Choice Award in the 2010 Elizabeth Jolley Prize.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, ABR, and thank you, judges. 1,400 entries is such a formidable number, I can't really imagine, but I'm so pleased to be amongst the company of Jonathan and Anthony. This is the first short story that I sent out in a couple of years, and I sent it out from the car park of a diner in Fremont, California, a few minutes before the deadline. So I'm pleased to be standing here. We are waiting out, the 5 of us. I remember this. The sun an hour or 2 from melting into the ocean, the slick trail of its gold showing the way we will take. Ahead of me, my sister sits regal and unafraid, in the middle of the raft that Finn has built from packing foam and empty chemical buckets, lids fixed airtight with caulk. He's already tested it out in our neighbour's pool and declared it seaworthy. But if the thing falls apart, he has promised to carry Sarah himself. Finn is 13, older than me by 5 years, and the only one of us 3 kids who has been to the island before. Our mother had long hair then, and Finn's dad was still around, hadn't yet skidded his motorcycle underneath a road train. My dad, Finn's dad now too, Mum constantly reminds us, shoulders a picnic basket filled with Sarah's favourites, Finn's favourites, Mum's favourites, mine. Cheese and apple sandwiches, salt and vinegar chips, slivers of mango doused with lime and chilli, ginger beer. Enough food to last us a week, though we'll be crossing back to the mainland this same night, lit by a quarter moon and a $2 torch. The people around us hardly seem like people, more like a muster of herd animals. They move steadily through the water in ones and twos, feeling for the slope of sandbar underfoot, the treacherous edge where the ocean floor falls away. That's how people, tourists mostly, get themselves drowned, snatched off by rips. The sea, the terrible, yep, we know, we say. Our dad gets a bit wordy sometimes. There are other families, some also towing small children on boogie boards, inflatable lilos, nothing so fine as Sarah's raft. Eskies bob alongside silver jellyfish balloons of clothes tied into plastic shopping bags. We're lucky, Dad's telling us. Today's a neap tide, safest time to make a crossing. The highest tide not as high as normal, the deepest part not so deep. Further out, the island looks like a rough dog slouching up out of the ocean, muzzle pointed northwest. What's out there? A lot of putrid birds, Finn's already told me, and some all right caves. Mobs of bogans sinking tinnies, nothing awesome. But tonight, after sunset, the shores around the island will be phosphorescent with a visiting swarm of bioluminescent phytoplankton on their anxious, brilliant way to who knows where. We'll perch along the highest bluff in a sprawl of blankets and eskies, while the waves crash iridescent against the rocks below, sweeping back to leave lonely blue stars stranded here and there, then charging back in to reclaim them. It will be spectacular, an eerie sort of magic, and I will never see anything like it ever again. But whatever, this isn't the point. In the end, the island is just a dog-shaped rock, covered with birds and sunburnt gawkers, temporarily surrounded by terrified dinoflagellates. It's this wading out that matters, this crossing, the bright, migratory animalness of it, going waist deep, chest deep, waist deep again. What matters is halfway over, how Finn looks back at us, then ahead again, and says to no one, or everyone, or maybe just to Sarah, I reckon this is how the afterlife must look. I see Dad look back at Mum and mouth the word, afterlife. Finn is the palest of us, lighter even than Mum, blonde right to his eyelashes, the only one who crisps up in the sun. He looks adopted, a thing we all know but know better than to say. Anyway, there it is. Do I make it through childhood without staking every possible biological claim on the man who calls us both my beloved savage? I'm ashamed to say that I do not. I'm content to share him only in his lesser moments. It is my dad who used to play bass in an almost famous blues band, but it is our dad who, before the blues band, used to play clarinet in a high school orchestra. It is my dad who promises to buy us a pair of handsome albino axolotls, and it is our dad who reneges when we neglect our goldfish duties, and Skeletor's tank is all slime and fog. There was a time, some years maybe, where it was just Finn and Mum, and this is maybe what I'm getting back at him for. Or else I'm getting back at him for all the names he isn't called in school, the way no one ever asks where he's from, or whether his parents are refos. Or else it's the fact that even though one of them is dead, he has two fathers, doesn't have to share his, and is allowed to wander off without telling anyone, to give reasons like just thinking or just walking, with getting soft looks instead of strife. Does my brother find some spiteful way of getting even, of undermining my full-bloodedness? He never does. Maybe he never feels the need to. Finn takes these pissing contests for what they are. In actual pissing contests, there is no competition and really no point. He gets halfway to the bougainvillea tumbling over the top of the fence, while I try, no hands, not to dribble on my runners. At the deepest point of the crossing, the ocean reaches my lower lip, and I hold on to Mum. Feel my feet levitate from the shell grip below, become cargo swimming from her strong gold shoulder, safe in her smell of coconut oil and warm bread, as she pushes on towards the island. Around us, the ocean thickens to an algaeic soup that stinks of dead things, proof that the plankton are here all around us. Though invisible for now, it isn't dark enough to give them away yet. This is the point where Finn's raft begins to keel, the empty buckets unhitching, and Sarah responds with a lot of high-pitched wailing and grabbing at salty air. When the raft breaks apart, Finn keeps his word, and Sarah scrambles up from the wreckage to ride his bony shoulders, her little grabby starfish hands clenching fistfuls of his tawny hair. It must hurt him badly, his eyes pulled to teary slits, but he says nothing while trying to shepherd pieces of the debris ahead of himself. Waves slap at his face, trying to get in through his mouth and nose. He screws his eyes shut, snorts water, while higher up Sarah sings, oblivious, her stubby little feet hooked under his wrists. "Hey mate," Dad offers, "I can take her." But both Finn and Sarah shake their heads, so Dad just cruises alongside in a Coast Guardish sort of way, until the ocean finally slips from Finn's shoulders and leaves Sarah cheerily marooned up there. There are no photographs from that day. Mum dropped the disposable quick snap crossing back to the mainland, and then we groped and kicked around for it. Nobody found it. Perhaps that's why I remember it so vividly. Finn stumbling through the breakers with Sarah, delivering her safely to dry sand, and waiting until Mum had let her off to squeak into some penguin burrows before he doubled over and gushed out all that swallowed seawater into a patch of saltbrush. Fiery stinger marks striped his quaky legs. Years later, somewhere into adulthood, I'll decide that this is a story to one day tell at my brother's wedding, or else his funeral. Possibly both, as with a certain kind of suit, it is suitable for either occasion. Instead of the wedding and/or funeral speech, though sure, there's still time for both, I'm delivering this story to my wife, trying to wrest my brother back from what local mythology has made of him, careless idiot at best, murderer at worst. T has been driving past those crosses at the shoulder of High Ridge Road for years, since before we even met. Shed made, white as desert bleached bones, coated with a fresh layer of paint every spring, strung with teddy bears, ribbons, other sentimental lark. Trinkets refreshed each September, along with the paint. The grandparents' work, we suspect, the father too modest for that sort of rubbish. This is all T knows of my brother. This and the couple 3 cards he's sent and the shed full of furniture he left behind, all gliding teak curves and high-tension wires, mid-century harpsichord, T calls it, explaining how their father was a luthier when friends admire the coffee table. My father, I'll sometimes add, my father was a luthier. After the hearing, depending on who you care to ask, Finn either ran, slunk, snuck, crawled, chuffed off, fucked off, hauled arse, or simply went to the Northern Isles of Scotland. Why, T wants to know, why would your brother come back here? I ask myself the same. And the rest is in the magazine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josephine. And with no further ado, I would now like to ask Ian Dickson back to the stage to announce the winner of this year's ABR Elizabeth Jolley Short Story Prize.
And the winner is Josephine Rowe for her story, please.
I think I'm too stunned to say anything intelligible, and I'm very bad at speeches. So again, I'll just thank the judges and ABR and the wonderful company that I was in, and I think it speaks volumes that that Jonathan and Anthony's work rewards repeated reading and the obvious work that has gone in to selecting the stories and the intrepid kind of narrative territory that they go into. So I think this is all the more staggering for that. Thank you.
And I would now like to congratulate Anthony Lawrence for his story Ash, which has been placed second. Thank you. And congratulations too to Jonathan Tell for his story The Water Calligrapher's Women, which was placed third. So thank you, everyone. That concludes the 2016 ABR Elizabeth Jolley Short Story Prize ceremony. Copies of the August issue are currently available from the Writers Festival bookshop, and I highly recommend that if you haven't already got one, you grab one so you can finish off the two excellent stories and also reread Anthony's. I'm sure Josephine and Anthony will be happy to sign copies for you after this, and please join me in congratulating this year's shortlist and everyone who entered the Jolley Prize.